It's such a thrill to be here. It really is. It's actually the first time I've actually been to a guitar factory, and it's a pretty amazing experience. To be here at the Fender Custom Shop's a real thrill. Well, this is just absolutely amazing. I wasn't prepared for this. I don't know whether you were. No, I wasn't. I mean, I knew it was going to be really detailed, but to actually see the old machines out of this world, there's too much.
Yeah.
Gosh. Sorry, I just... Do you mind if I just have a look at that poster? Oh, wow. There's Alvino Ray. I was telling you about Alvino Ray. Oh, Arthur Smith, Guitar Boogie.
I love that. This is cool, aren't they, these posters?
Well, I was part of a whole generation of people who were seduced by the sounds of rock and roll through their radios, you know, and they heard this wild music, and whether it was a sort of the Little Richard, you know, sort of big band stuff, but certainly the aspect of what was coming from the more rockabilly side of it. So that sort of Elvis Presley and Bill Black and Scotty Moore, that sort of nucleus. The rock and roll trio is just something that was like a seminal event to hear something like that. There weren't many guitarists in the area at that point. You'd hear of other guitarists and meet other guitarists, but nobody was in a really close proximity to you. But there was an art college at Epsom. Jeff Beck's sister was attending that art college. There was a record collector who collected rock and roll and rockabilly records, and they were having a conversation, and she said, my brother's really weird, you know, he plays records, and he's sort of trying to learn guitar from them, but he's only got a homemade guitar. And he said, well, we've got one of those here, you know, who lives in Epsom. Well, I think they cooked it up. Maybe we should get these two together. And there was a knock on the door, and there was Jeff's sister, and there was Jeff holding his homemade guitar, and we just bonded immediately. But curiously enough, I get sort of headhunted to play on sessions, and it was a very sort of very interesting sort of time, really, because I would go into the session lineup with these guys who were considerably older than I was. I mean, a good 7 years older would be the youngest one. Okay, so I was a studio musician, and I'd done sessions for this fellow called George Ogomelski, who actually was the manager of the Yardbirds, and he'd asked me to join the Yardbirds at one point. I didn't feel very comfortable about it because I knew Eric didn't know, and I said no. And then it came up another time, and by that time I was a producer. I'd worked my way up. Being a studio musician, I took it on board as almost like an apprenticeship because I wanted to learn from the recording engineers for certain techniques. I really wanted to learn how things were done. By this time I could read music, which meant that I could write it and do arrangements. And then I was producing as well, so I was in a really good sort of zone. And when I had this second request to join, I said, well, I know somebody who'd be really good for this, and it's Jeff Beck. And of course he went in there and did some amazing work with the Yardbirds. I mean, yeah, absolutely amazing. Out of this world then, and is out of this world now. It's just fabulous. So what happens as a result of this, Jeff being in the Yardbirds, I'm still living with my parents at the time in Epsom. And I hear this sort of car roar up, and I thought, what's that? I didn't know it was a car, I just heard this thing roaring up. And I looked out the window, and I saw that there was a Corvette Stingray outside. And there's somebody's getting out, of course it's Jeff. And Jeff's coming out, and he's holding this guitar, and he's come to have a play, you know. And he knocks on the door, and I say, come in, Jeff, you know. He's saying about that they'd just done a sort of a new deal, and he bought the Stingray with it. He said, here, this is yours. And he gave me the Telecaster that he'd been using. He said, this is for yours for getting me in the Yardbirds. Well, obviously I was really moved. I mean, you know, it's got a lot of love in that, in that gesture of giving it to me. I happened to be with Jeff one night at a concert where there was a bit of a fuss on the stage, and Keith Ralph, he was really sort of shouting at the audience. What could only be described as a punk performance. It was fantastic, actually. And I went to the dressing room to congratulate him. There's this massive row going on. And Paul Smith, the bass player, quit the band. And he was trying to get the drummer to go as well. And he said, no, I'm going to stay. And he stormed off. It was a pretty odd situation to have to sort of witness. But we've got the marquee coming up on one Thursday or whatever it was. This is a weekend thing. I said, well, I'll play then. Because he'd left his bass behind. He just quit. Jeff and I had spoken before about playing together. And so here was an opportunity to do it. But I started off on bass and then quickly recruited Chris Dreyer to take over the bass so I could do the sort of guitar stuff with Jeff. So it's a bit of mix and matching in the early days. But then Jeff sort of left the band, and that was a complete surprise. The 5 Yardbirds became 4, and so I started playing the Telecaster in that role. I got to the point where I wanted to consecrate this guitar and really make it my own. Being there in the Yardbirds, I was having to build my own identity within that group, and to make it feel like my own instrument, I sort of started putting mirrors on it so that would be quite interesting in the light, so you could use it in an optical way with the lights and shine the mirrors on people while you were playing. It was something that then became quite kinetic as well. And then I had the idea that I'd want to actually have a complete consecration of it and strip it and paint it. So the whole of the dragon artwork, that was the overall idea of approaching it, and I wanted to use sort of poster paint, which was used in the production of those psychedelic posters. So it becomes quite a psychedelic guitar, and that's just absolutely what the idea of it is. And the year of 1968 is when the Yardbirds decide that they want to fold. So it comes to the point where I make a decision that I'm going to start my own band. And I could see what way it ought to go at that point. And I knew what way I was going to take it. Something as radical at that time that involved acoustic and electric guitars and this orchestration of the same, of guitars. We have a rehearsal in London, and then I get them to my house to rehearse everything that we're going to need for a set and everything that we're going to need for Led Zeppelin 1. So when we went in the studio, we were going in on the downtime of the studio. First one's in at 11 o'clock at night, then the next one's at 10 o'clock at night, and, it's like definitely the downtime. And we were sort of going in, but collectively, the whole album is done in 30 hours. And the Telecaster is employed all the way through that album. And it's just a little small amp that I'm using, and the overdrive box, and a wah-wah pedal at times. But it just goes to show the versatility of the Telecaster and what could be achieved with the minimal amount of equipment. It's 1969 or 1970. I go on tour, and I leave my Telecaster behind with somebody who was who made ceramics and was also a bit of an artist. And he was going to look after my house. So I went off and did the tour, and the tour was absolutely amazing. So I came back home, and he said, I've got a present for you. And I said, what's that? And I figured it was going to be a bit of ceramics. He said, the guitar. So I looked at the guitar, and I didn't for one moment think it was mine, because it was a Telecaster, and it had been painted with all these modulating lines with very earthy colours all over it. And I said, yeah, where's my guitar? He said, oh no, that's it, that's my present. I repainted your guitar for you. Now I would have probably smashed the guitar over his head. I was still so vibed up from the tour that the whole thing didn't really sort of fully connect. But I never felt comfortable with it, so I just had it all taken off. I just did it. I couldn't live with the fact, this idiot had done this. So, and I didn't want to look at it, didn't want to relate to the guitar, which was Jeff's guitar that had been given to me, it had been painted for the Yardbirds and Led Zeppelin, mucked about like this. So I just had it stripped. I just want to put the guitar back as it was. I want to give it some TLC and bring it back to life. This guitar, it's so special. It's got such a history to it that it needs to be able to travel in its own way and be cloned, It's just the journey that it has and the way that everything comes together so quickly. It's given to me by Jeff, but it's got a journey like I've got a journey too. That journey of that guitar through is pretty extraordinary stuff. Indeed, it's that magical Telecaster, isn't it?